that's good already. Great. Okay. We got another minute. Well, it's 2:30. Shall we get started?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to our session. We are, as you can see, presenting on the impact of high stakes testing on overage undercredited students, which has been a hot topic today. I was in Jody's session earlier today. We were talking a lot about data and how it impacts our students. And I think that with this group, we have a lot of nice things that we'll be able to share today. So I'm kind of excited for us to all come together and have a loose conversation. You'll notice as we go through the presentation, there'll be a few places where we were going to have some group chats, but I think that we're small enough that we'll probably be able to just kind of expand it and hope that you'll just jump in and unmute yourselves and feel free to talk with us. The chat is open on Whova, so I'll be taking a look at those occasionally, and we'll kind of go through the presentation and talk about all of the data that New Dawn has been experiencing with COVID and what we can do moving forward. So here is our session agenda today. Kind of talked about that already, but we'll talk about us and we'll talk about unintended consequences. And then of course, all of us will get to talk a little bit further more about what we're doing in our respective schools and what that looks like across the country. It's really nice that we have a nice group of people that have come from all over. And it's certainly, this is, our privilege to be participating in these sessions year after year with RAPSA. And it's really nice being with like-minded people that we're able to have these real conversations and have the same experiences and the same frustrations. So this has always been really rewarding for us. And it's really great that we get to present and speak with you directly about it as well. Sarah, you want to do the New Dawn intros?
Sure. My name's Sara Asmussen, and I'm the founding executive director of New Dawn Charter Schools. I guess 2 years ago, we were New Dawn Charter High School. Now we're schools. We opened our first site is in Brooklyn, New York. We opened our second site in Jamaica, Queens in New York in September 2019, just in time for COVID. We are a transfer school, which in New York State means we take kids 15 to 21 in Brooklyn, and 16 to 21 in Queens who have failed at least one other high school. Brooklyn does not recruit from the 8th grade, whereas Queens, they do. But you have to be 16 years old in an 8th grade in order to enroll at Queens. Our students are some of the most at risk in the city. New York City, luckily, does an analysis every year of all the transfer schools. We always end up with one of the highest at-risk groups in the city, and that's kids who are much older, no credits, and none of the Regents exams, which is what we're going to focus on specifically today. At this point, we do not get paid for students over the age of 21, but if you're a student of ours and you've been working towards your degree, we will in fact keep you until you graduate. So we've had students graduated. I think our oldest was 24 finally.
Yeah, that was, what's his name with art? I can't, oh, no, it wasn't. It was Quasine with math when we finally were able to get the math. Yep.
Yes. Yep. Yep. So we are a traditional school in the sense of you must get all your credits as mandated by the New York State Board of Regents, and you must pass all 5 of your Regents exams. So in that respect, we're the same, but when you do it, how you do it, everything is individualized to the student.
It was
Well,
free.
we pretty much covered that.
Pardon?
I mean, just in terms of our demographics, just a little bit further too, that a lot, for us in particular, both of our schools, and this is also an important part of contention with charter schools in general, is that we're serving, disenfranchised populations. And so we typically serve a very, very high population of special ed and in the Queens population, especially in the L population. And so as you can see for both, for both schools, we are basically at 50% or maybe even higher in Brooklyn this year. I'm not sure for you guys. I thought Donna mentioned that you guys said we're over 50%. I think we're just at 50 in Queens.
Yeah, we're 52, 53%.
Yeah.
Depending on the year.
Yeah. And so for us, working with this group, particularly with COVID, and city just announced that schools are going remote tomorrow. So more shifting for us to do. It's a good thing we're getting good at this. We really have been extremely mindful about how we're going to be reaching these students and providing them with the opportunities to remain engaged and have all the resources they need, whether they're here in hybrid or, one day when we ever get to see our kids again, that they move forward and they have success. And so for us in particular, we have done really well with our IEP population with Regents, and Sara will be speaking to that a little bit in a few slides from now. As we all know, speaking of COVID, like I said, we just got the note that city schools are closing and going to full remote starting tomorrow. That we do have extensive challenges, substantial challenges. One of the things that has always struck me, we had a quality visit with the state over the summer. And I think this sits with me every single time I think about the emotional trauma and the stress that our students are facing. Is one of our students was in a social studies classroom, and we had our authorizer visit, and the student shared that, and you could just see that the student was just so upset, that he was supposed to see his neighbor, and he was supposed to have dinner with his neighbor, and his neighbor got sick and died. And when our students are in these close quarters and have these relationships with the people around them, and there's just no place to process that information, we're seeing so much of our students just trying to just reach out and muddle through and overcome all of these things. And so for us in particular, our mentorship program and the advisory programs that we have in place also provide additional support so that we can ensure that students that are experiencing that and seeing that have someone to talk to and have some access, even though we're in this remote world. And that absolutely covers, that absolutely shadows what they're doing academically, because they're dealing with all of this. And now they're expected to, be performing at a college and career level and meet all these benchmarks that we're supposed to be doing and succeeding at, and we're all learning, and so it's really it's an opportunity to see what we can do better and continue to improve our model as we look at all of these elements and how they affect student engagement and performance overall. So as I mentioned, we're in a pretty short group. And so I would hope to open it up right now, either through the chat or if you'd like to unmute yourselves and perhaps talk about, what your school has personally faced during this time period, and, what you have done as a school or a group that has been able to mitigate some of those circumstances for the students, and talk a little bit about the data and the expectations around accountability for you. Do I have to unmute people? I think I have to unmute, right? That might help.
They should have capabilities to unmute themselves.
Okay, great, okay. Thanks, Nancy. So would anyone like to share their school experiences right now?
I don't know. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I didn't know if we were going to do breakout groups or some whatnot, but hi, my name is Yajita, and I'm an independent study teacher. I teach adult students. My oldest student is 83. During the whole COVID, the transitioning, experiencing pushback from students who were not receptive with the technology. Before COVID had hit, we were able to roll out like an online curriculum, issue out Chromebooks. And so one of the roadblocks was just there wasn't any trust. I was a new teacher taking over for another teacher. And so it took several months before there was a buy-in to use the technology. Some students dropped out of the program. They have since returned, but just not having that trust of using technology, the curriculum, and so forth. And then not having access to know how to scan documents, having, equipment to scan, or, familiarity with the apps, even though I was available to teach all of that technology to them. So that was one of the roadblocks that I faced.
How has it changed over time? Has it gotten better since we've been in it for so long now?
Yes, it has. There's a trust level. We built up a rapport. Students are, they're adult students. So in assisting their kids, that was another challenge. The energy helping out their own children within their own household with the distant learning, and being able to focus with them, themselves with using the technology. So now it's good. It's we still have some challenges with our FaceTiming for meeting instructions. Sometimes they forget the links, don't know how to find the links, even though there's a lot of repetition in adult ed that you have to employ. However, it's going well this time around.
Well, that's good to hear. And it's really interesting, and you brought up the family aspect too, because, as a parent, and Sara, had a really unique experience last year with her twins that she could talk to, but, you could just see the differences and how, different modes of instruction and how students were engaged during this time period, and how people were absolutely scrambling and trying to figure things out. And, some of them went really well and some of it didn't. And I can even see it this year with my daughter's senior year, and, some of her classes are spot on, they're engaged, they're doing work. And in some classes, it's like she gets a note, sorry, I have to help my kid with his class right now. We're not going to have a Zoom class today. Just do XYZ, work. And that's a real thing. We're all, in that boat. I mean, Sara, I don't want you to talk about the boys, but I mean, that was a stark difference in how they were engaged too in their final year.
Yeah, I had a nice little control group there. They last year were seniors in high school. One of their schools all day long Zoom, including counseling. The other one checked in the morning and checked a box that he was present, and that was it. And so I think that's one of the big, and these are both New York City district high schools. So they had the same structure, the same bosses, all that, yet completely different. So I think that's one of the things that we compare what we're doing to other schools, like other high schools, very different. There's just no consistency across schools at all.
I think in the future too, and please, everyone, feel free to jump in because we're small. I put it in the chat, so just don't worry about going into a separate chat room. We're not going to do that. Just jump right in. You know, those experiences are certainly going to color how, you know, we talk about learning gaps and learning loss, especially in the younger grades. And, you know, for a transfer school like us, you know, that's something that is going to impact our enrollments over the time and also their level of experience. And I always think about this going back to when the shifts to Common Core first happened when we opened the Brooklyn campus. And our students had such interrupted instruction in math because Common Core was so different that it took us so long to get students into a groove of regular math instruction. And now we're going to be seeing this across the board in every subject area, especially literacy and writing. And this is the type of thing that we have to anticipate, not just next year, but the years down the line when these kids come up and aren't making it and have to come back and find us so that they can, you know, get caught up and move forward. Before we move on, does anyone else have anything that they would like to add? Okay, so let's talk about unintended consequences. This is you, Sara.
Okay, yeah, this is how when we first put this together, this is the thing. What happened in New York State, we're one of 12 states in the country that mandates students take at least math and algebra, or I'm sorry, math and ELA assessments in order to graduate. But we have 5 of them. So we have those 2, plus we have a global history, a US history, and a science. And that's mandated for everyone to graduate. They've now come up with some other pathways, but those other pathways, if you're looking at accountability and how you fit into the ESSA structure, it counts against you. So it is to your advantage to do the five regions. But we looked at this as an opportunity. We have so many students who've completed all their coursework and they just can't pass the regions. So we looked at this as an opportunity to re-engage those students who had their credit accumulation or were minus a couple credits, but had just been struggling with the regions and were not able to pass. We looked at this as the opportunity to re-engage them. And when you look at the numbers, you'll see that that absolutely happened. We re-looked at our instructional program to look at how we could add more rigor in terms of the college level and language use, because what's happening, which is so unfair. I mean, if you look at this example today, I almost had an anxiety attack when Lisa told me I got to share this screen. I was like, oh my God, do not do that. We will spend 10 minutes with me trying to figure out how to do this during the presentation. That doesn't mean I don't get out of bed in the morning and go to work and function as an adult. It just means I'm really not good at this technical stuff. I'm not good at all the many state portals that the state has us enter things. Yet on the other hand, I'm running an organization that expects students who are sometimes at an elementary level to pass exams at a score of 85 out of 100. You understand these Regents exams, their pass rate is 65. But in order for us to get credit for college-ready students, which gets more points than just a 65, they have to be at an 85 or an 80. That's hard even for a student who's on track. Some of us just are not good at everything. And I think we really have to look at that and figure out other ways that we can assess this. We also use this as an opportunity to look at Might we want to go with asynchronous learning after the pandemic is over? How well do we do with this? So as I was thinking about these things, I also thought about accountability and how we take responsibility for this. All of this has to do with accountability. All of this has to do with us proving to other people that we are an accountable school. And I should clarify up front, under the ESSA categories, we are a failing school. Even though we keep getting 5-year renewals, we are considered based on these requirements, because, you know, students also have to pass these exams and graduate by a certain age. So if you're dealing with 21-year-olds, you're already failing. So these are all the things I was thinking about. And I was thinking about the history of how we ended up here as I was putting this data together. Before 2000, we really had no consistent accountability across the country. You know, schools were doing, states were doing, districts were doing whatever met their needs. And there was really no way to capture data to say, how is one state doing compared to another? Why this is important, I'm not quite sure now. Then I was very clear why it was important. Today, I am not so sure. Which brought us No Child Left Behind. And we have to remember, No Child Left Behind was developed. First of all, the main writer was someone who has a bachelor's degree in political science, no experience teaching, never worked in a school system, and it was based on the faulty data from Texas. Not picking on Texas, but it was under Rod Page and George Bush, who used the faulty data. You know, later data analysis after NCLB was passed showed that, in fact, Texas had a 33% 5-year graduation rate. They did not have the almost 100% that they touted in 2000. And there's a variety of reasons for that, and we can all go back and read it. But I think it's important to know we're still living under the vestige of No Child Left Behind. Call it whatever you want. It is still these outrageously high standards that not everyone can make, nor should we expect everyone to be able to make it. And that's not saying you don't have a right to an education, you don't have a right to getting all the knowledge you can, you don't have a right to go to college. It's just saying we're doing these arbitrary numbers with these arbitrary tests that take the place of, in some cases, 2 years of learning. And we need to rethink that, but we also need to remember we're in this position because we did not take accountability. And I'll admit the majority of us were products of that lack of accountability and not the designers of it. But we need to remember that our predecessors did not take accountability. So one of the things we're going to ask you all to do is to come up with, if we talked in one voice to policymakers and politicians, what would we ask for? So we need to remember the history and how we got here. So that's what I had in mind when I looked at this data, because let's think about it. What they did in New York State is they said, okay, June and August, you don't have to give the regents. If you had been in a regents class or a class that had terminated in a regents exam and you failed the exam but passed the class, you automatically got the exemption. If you were signed up for a regents class that you got the exemption. Okay, so I wanted to look and see how that compared to years when we actually had to administer the regents. So this first slide, I went back 3 years because we did give the regents in January 2020. And I wanted to see if there was if this year for some reason was different. If you look at this, these are the number of students who took the exams. There's no difference. The red line is the January 2020. It's the 5 regents exam. And what you see is there's anywhere from 18 to 31 kids taking any exam in any January. So there's really no difference. Okay, next. Then I wanted to look at the proficiency. again, these are kids who actually sat for the Regents exam. Yes, we know global history in January 2019 is not a pretty picture. You can also tell we dealt with it. But again, here what you see is January 2020 was no different than the prior 2 years. Lines are fairly, for the most part, the same line. Next slide, please. Okay, now remember I said that in June, you could have any kid who took a Regents exam prior, class, passed the class, failed the exam. We put them back into the class just to make sure all our, because we have special rules for transfer schools, particularly if you're a charter school. So we wanted to cover all our bases, and we actually put these kids back in these classes. So you can see that what having these exemptions, it broadened the
Sarah,
number.
can I just stop you for a second? Our
Yeah.
slide's not advancing.
No, this is the one I want. Oh,
No, I know, but Jody just texted that the slide's not moving. The folks can't see it.
oh, that's weird. I can.
What do you guys see? Which Jody, can you
I think
tell
it
me
was
which slide?
delayed, but we can see it now.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Sorry
So-
about that. Thanks, Jody.
In terms of equity, what you can see here is this opened up to all those kids who had struggled with exams, all those kids I was talking about who had done their credits but couldn't get through the exam. It opened up so many more opportunities for them. So I'm comparing it to the actual, oh, I'm sorry, I have January down there, but it's June. These are June number of kids that took the exam in June. The red line is the year we had the exemption. The other two was normal. You have to take the test. Okay. Now, what I'm thinking is I can just hear the New York State Board of Regents going, you all cheated. My God, it was Regents Christmas. You gave away diplomas and Regents. So that was my main concern, because I wanted to make sure that we took accountability for what we really did. So next slide. Okay, this is June. Results. 2 years, the yellow and the green. Those are kids who actually sat and took the exam. The red line is the number of kids who got credit for a Regents exam based on an exemption, based on passing the class without taking a test. And what these results show is we do better with fewer kids when we give the test, except in global history.
That was the shift year, thank God.
We need to work on our global history here a little.
Yeah.
But no, I think this is very important, because if we were cheating, if we weren't holding ourselves accountable, if we were just giving away grades and exams, this red line would be much closer to 100% and would be above both the other two lines. And in fact, it's not. So the argument would be there is a way that these kids can still get credit, and it doesn't look any different from if they take the exam, except it's opened up to more kids. Which I think is important, because we all pretend like passing this exam means you're smarter than the rest of the world, or you're better, or you somehow, it's not necessarily true when you're offering free education to 100% of the population. There's going to be wide variations within that. Some of us are really good test takers, but we can't share a screen. I mean, everybody comes with different abilities. And I think as educators, it's important for us to not only capture that, but explain how we're going to be accountable to that. So next. Okay, now this one is a better example, because this is the number of kids. We were not able, June was a gift, agreed. August, it was no, you had to actually take the class. So what you see here is the same number of kids pretty much took the class every August. And of course, we did have more because of COVID, because kids didn't pass the class. So more kids came back for summer school. But you can see again, global history is up there with 23 students took it in August. but it's not, this is not significantly different from whether they set for the exam or they got an exemption. And the results showed that, again, okay, now our Achilles heel is algebra in 2019 in August. But if you look at this again, the kids actually, in the case of 2018, did better when they set for the exam than when we just gave them these exemptions. So again, I would argue that this testing really, if you're not going to go to college, if you're not, even if you are going to go to college, our kids go to college all the time and we rarely get above an 85. We get a handful of kids who pass above an 85 and we have a 65% college enrollment rate. So we know that these tests, while they might be indicative of something, are not indicative of success, and that by using these things to rate how we as a school perform, rate how our teachers do, rate how our students do, is really unfair, simply because they've been left behind in some, K through 12 grade or by some life circumstances. And now they're trying to graduate, and we're putting these state requirements in ways to keep them from graduating is what we're doing. And I think this data shows that, in fact, the data isn't that different, even if it's just based on classroom performance. Now, there's a million issues. We can get into grade inflation. Every school does it differently, but quite frankly, every school does their testing differently.
Move forward.
Oh, sorry, what?
Oh, no, sorry.
Oh. No, I just think this is really important. I was shocked myself. I thought it would be way up around 100%. It was not. I think we need to re-examine the testing situation. I think how we judge success on the tests. Like I said, in New York State, a pass is a 65, and if you have an IEP, the pass is 55. When they do our accountability, they will not count the kids who got a 55 to 64 with IEPs. They are failures. So if you have a 50% population of IEP students, it really, really impacts your results. And we need to, I think, redo this entire system. And I didn't think this way 10 years ago at all. Okay.
Yeah, we were talking about this earlier too, and just even going back to, thinking about engagement and keeping our kids persistent, which is another part of, like the New York City Quality Report too. We want to see kids that just keep coming back so that they could finish. And so, we talked about this earlier in the A game session, where, students that get just that small carrot of success, we talk about, that really speeds up their trajectory, at least for our schools, where students can move forward and kind of not race to the finish line, but be a little bit more consistent rather than some of the jig-jagged edges that some of our students would often experience, especially if they're coming in with 0 credits and they're 19. It takes them a long time to kind of like get back in the habit of doing school and, being responsible and coming to class and, doing all of those things. And then plus there's the life circumstances that get on the way on top of that. And so when we find that students get just this one thing, they get to check that box, it really changes their outlook and the way they encounter their own performance and their trajectory to finishing. And I think that that's probably one of the most important things that we could talk about, certainly as a working group here, is just that one piece really acts as a roadblock in so many cases because of what they face. And so giving them that space and being able to have that experience really does make a very big difference in how they finish.
Yeah, and I would add, I really think this pandemic is our opportunity to really say we need to reevaluate this. We all need to go back and look at our data, see how our kids did this year versus last year, and make the argument that we really don't need to do this. to keep kids from graduating. I'm not talking about getting into colleges, any of that. And I believe all kids should have the opportunity so that when they're 35 and they decide they want to go back to college, they should have all this stuff taken care of, but there has to be a better way than the way we're doing it. Okay, so the final slide is, remember how I said it opened up so many more opportunities for kids? Because when you look at the number of kids who actually took the test, except for August, when you look in January and June, not all our kids show up for the test. You've got 21 kids taking a test. Well, great, there were 75 kids who were supposed to. That's another thing, that our kids have such high test anxiety and such low self-esteem that many times it's a struggle to even get them into the building to take the test. So by not having that test anxiety present, you can see our graduation rate, and we have not changed the number of kids in our school at all. It's been the same, not consistent over the last 3 years. We went from like 62, 63 kids graduating to 82 kids graduating with these exemptions. That's 20 lives that are impacted in a very positive way moving forward, because I can promise you, even the kids that go to college, the majority of city and state colleges are not looking at your Regents scores. So this is not even keeping kids from getting into college. It's not, it's not a free diploma. They've met all the requirements. It's just removing that one block, which is testing.
And I would also add too, with that is the, oh my God, I just had just a thought and it's just out of my head already. Oh, no. For many of us, and I'm sure you guys on watching this right now probably have the same experiences. We have a lot of kids that had dropped out and, or just kind of like faded away because they were just tired of making all of these attempts and not getting anywhere with it. And so with these exemptions, it really afforded us the opportunity to try and re-engage some of those students that had given up because they had, like I had mentioned, Quasim at 24 that had failed the algebra regents 8 times. And then finally with the change in the exemptions and passes, we were finally able to get them over the hump. So that's a very big deal. And so
I think it's important, Lisa, also to mention in his particular case, he got over a 65 on all the other 4 regents.
Right. Exactly.
As educators, we do all acknowledge there are some kids who do not have IEPs, are perfectly normal, lovely, smart, intelligent people who have math problems.
Right, exactly. And so, I think it's so important, that we get that opportunity to re-engage. I was in the New York City presentation earlier, and they were talking about re-engaging students. And this was, one of the important parts that they had a student come in, a former student, talk about. It's just the fact that, like, this student in particular had 2 kids, dropped out of the school 3 times, went to a different school, had life circumstances get in the way, had, home insecurity and food insecurity, like all of these different things. And because people still kept reaching out to this student, he was able to complete, finally graduate, and then move on and go to college and get a degree and have his family. And I think that for so many of our kids, we have a school aide that's one of our graduates as well. And, it's just to see the difference when they're able to see a future and know that they have options. It's a significant change into what they do and what they see for themselves. And so I think we have, like Sarah's been saying, a very unique opportunity to use data like this. And I'm sure you all have, and I'd be eager to hear about what your data looks like and how you've been engaging students in this way, to look to the future and say, what can we do? And how can we advocate? We're lucky we have David Frank as our authorizer, and he's been absolutely fantastic in working with us and, moving this message forward. But not everybody is as lucky as we are. And so what's happening across the board when that support isn't there? Because what ultimately hurts is not us. I mean, yeah, it's annoying, right? Because we have accountability, we have to do all these hoops or whatever. but it's hurting the kids. And that's really where the issue is that, you know, these types of things are the types of roadblocks that push a kid so far down and so far into depression that they don't take the risk. And we want to eliminate that from happening. We want to create a situation where we can pick up the phone and say, I haven't seen you in a year, you know, but you can do X, Y, and Z now, instead of just having to take this test. Come back, let's get you, let's get this done. And so that for us is everything. So, you know, I think we've talked a lot about this and you know, really what the practical, you know, side to that is. And, you know, I would love to hear from all of you about what's happening in your groups, and what are some of the moves that you're making as a team to think about, you know, the world post-COVID. What can we do, and how can we, you know, move past some of this accountability so that we enable our students to remain engaged and move forward. And please just jump in. You can unmute or use the chat, either one. We have them both open.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Emily.
Yes.
Hi. So I'm speaking from the perspective of one of those No Child Left Behind guinea pigs. I live in California now, but I'm from New York. So I was taking Regents exams during Math A and Math B, if you remember that period.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And so a couple of my best friends could not pass Math B. And I remember they lowered the threshold for passing, I think, to like 40%, and still nobody was passing it. We couldn't even say what we were learning. Like if somebody asked me, oh, what classes are you taking? I didn't know trigonometry, algebra. I was just Math A or Math B. That's how much we were just focused on the test and the test only. And I remember seeing my math teachers just fall apart, realizing they couldn't do their jobs. They couldn't teach the way they wanted to teach. They really just had to teach this test. And I did have several friends fail Math B multiple times. And, you know, eventually they had to reform things and change it. And these are people who are now very successful, like working great jobs, and you wouldn't know. So I think part of the messaging is just letting the young people know your self-worth doesn't come from what a test score says. Like it has nothing to do with a test score, and that all sorts of people have issues taking tests. Even if you're incredibly smart, you might just not be a good test taker. It doesn't matter. So one, just making sure their self-worth isn't in a test score. And two, like having people who maybe did fail Regents multiple times, but are now successful, went to college, you know, went on to careers, kind of coming back in and sharing their experiences, and maybe giving these young people some hope that, you know, these people are completely successful, even though they didn't do well in these certain tests as well. But I do think just my whole psyche, like who I am as a young person or an adult now, is so much ingrained on how that testing was for me as a kid. Like we knew we were guinea pigs when we were in high school, that they were trying to figure this out. And that's still like, I don't know, just that whole self-worth and comparing test scores, that was a big part of my high school experience.
Yeah, I mean, like, let's face it, as educators and as products of assessments, I mean, that's basically why we're still in the field, because we're so used to evaluation and being validated by that evaluation. This is what we do. And now we're just trying to make it better, right?
Yeah.
I can totally relate to the Math A, Math B. When I was a senior in high school, I was taking psychology, and the psychologist had me tutor a student to just pass that math test, or otherwise that student would not have graduated because of these requirements. So I totally relate to what you were saying, Emily. You know, that we break out fancy footwork to try to help kids get through it, but you can see about, you know, like just how demoralizing it can really be, and the impact that it has on students across the board. How about others? Anybody else have something to share about this, either an anecdotal or an experience?
Lisa and Sarah, this is Jody. Have there been no conversation in New York about moving toward other methods of skill assessment, like portfolios or capstones, or, you know,
there's the alternate assessment, Jody, that's in place. And actually I mean, not funny, but, right before COVID hit, the regents had actually done sort of like a roadshow, and they had gone throughout the state collecting information. This was another real powerful experience that we had with parents and students that showed up at these roundtables to talk about the graduation requirements. And so, we sat at the Brooklyn meeting with the parents of a special ed student. I mean, this poor woman, we were like practically in tears because of the sheer amount of work that as a parent, she had to do to sit with her kid and get through all of these exams. And, just talking about the stress and what it did to her daughter over the course of her high school career. It was just, when you listen to these stories, and it's, this happens everywhere, and everyone has similar experiences. It's just incredible that, that at this time where, we're so focused on, looking at trauma, working on diversity and inclusion, but yet we still can't get this part right to make someone feel whole in this assessment system. And so I think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done where we can make those kinds of changes. And it's going to have to start with the regents and, maybe with the, changes in grant funding and, those opportunities. There'll be a working group that'll present itself that will be able to make some kind of recommendation on that.
I think also the interesting, kind of the contradiction here is the reason we all have our jobs is because of, No Child Left Behind, and now all children succeed, or whatever it is now these days, that we all have our jobs because the federal government and states have created this system whereby the have-nots have to go somewhere else so that the good schools can get their good ratings. And I think that, like Lisa said, that's the shame of all of this. Yes, I love my job, but I would give it up in a nanosecond if there was some way that all students could stay in their traditional high school and be successful. It is the only people it's hurting is kids. And while our kids love our school, they love being here, they love us, they know they're second-class citizens, because that's how they're made to feel by their districts, by their old schools, by the state. It's unfair and it's unfortunate.
Absolutely. And so we've kind of talked about this, about the future and what this means for our kids. And, I'd like to hear from the group if there's other things that are happening that are sort of, like what's been happening in other places where, assessments can't be given, or, the different graduation requirements have to be put to the side because of COVID. So what have some of you experienced to that end?
What was interesting, and this is a different thing. What was interesting to me is that you said that state and local colleges don't even look at the regent scores. So if somebody's serious about wanting to go to college, not only do they have to pass 5 regents, they have to take another assessment in non-COVID times, or why does New York what is New York's reason for saying that the regents are important when their own colleges don't even use those results to admit students?
They don't look at, they do. So if you get below that 80, 85, you have to take a remediation class, but they don't say you can't come to school here because your regent scores weren't high enough. And of course, private colleges and universities do. But yeah, I was talking specifically CUNY and some SUNYs. Some SUNYs are very high. They also have those private school standards. But for the most part, you can still enroll in college. And yeah, it's true, you have to pay for that remediation credit, but at least you have the opportunity.
And the other thing too is looking at the SAT now and the ACT, and a lot of those are being waived because of COVID. I mean,
right.
And so if you're going to be waiving that, then let's not, let's let's be realistic about all of these other requirements. And going back to what Sara said at the beginning of this presentation, if we look at how, states assess their students in completion, we are one of just a few states that have so many exams. What is it that, scaling back and looking at the things that matter most, like literacy and writing, and, we want our students to be reflective in whatever content area it is. So why not create an assessment that, looks at those skills that they have to use not only in school, but if they're in a job and they need to read a contract or a job, a job offer. Those are the types of things that we really should be focusing on so that it's realistic and, it's something that our students would actually use and not just say, oh, I passed the living environment regents and, when's the next time I'm going to be studying, beaks of finches, for human evolution. I mean, it's not, unless you're going into that field, how often are you going to access that? And so we want that to be something that is useful. So we've already kind of talked about this, but let's go back to what Sara was talking about at the beginning. It's just like, if we're going to be able to advocate for this, so what are some of the things that we should be doing, as a collective? And, we kind of talk about this. Sara and I have had this conversation in many of our presentations over the years about, what can we do next, as a group. RAPSA is a fantastic, opportunity so that we can come together and talk about these shortcomings and, complain, but also, really be thoughtful about next steps and how we can make a difference and advocate for our students across the country and saying, this is what our kids need. And I think that this would be a good place for us to, with 10 minutes left, kind of wind down and think about, so what is it? What is it that we do want as a collective that will make, give us basically the biggest bang for our buck for our kids? What can we do as a group?
Me personally, it's Jody again. I think the big mistake and the shame that was brought on by No Child Left Behind was like, because they said everybody needs to go to college, they started cutting the CTE courses. Like 2 of my brothers did automotive training in high school and have gone on to have very successful automotive career. One builds race cars and the other one, has a $200,000 a year plus job. We're dealing with automotive stuff. I don't really know what his job is, but he's not a mechanic. I know that. So to bring back those skilled trades that keep kids engaged and interested in when they're not in college or not interested in college, that doesn't mean they can't go later just because they choose to do a skilled trade first. I think we need to bring back a lot of the stuff like that was in place in high schools prior to No Child Left Behind, and get to the mindset that there are core competencies that people need to know to function, and life skills that make you successful in the workplace also make you successful in college, like showing up on time and planning and organizing and all those sorts of things. So I'd like to see a movement towards figuring out what those core competencies are, and bringing back many more pathways within the high school system.
100% agree with that. I think the connotation, I can remember when I was in high school, the connotation was that if anyone was in BOCES, which is where the VOTEC work was done, and honestly, like, I wish I had known more about it, because I probably would have done some of that work, because the tech training was amazing that was offered, but the connotation of being involved in that was that you were a failure and you couldn't make it in the other tracks that you were in. And so, that, completely got decimated as a result of the I guess this came from No Child Left Behind and whatever else. And so that really is, you know, at least in New York, it was a shame for BOCES to be gutted in that way, because a lot of those programs are really pretty fabulous. And so hopefully we'll kind of get a grip and come back to that. Jody, not to put you on the spot, but earlier in the A game presentation, you talked about having 10 different focus groups going. You know, are there commonalities about what we're discussing among those groups that you're facilitating with this?
There are definitely commonalities, but you are correct in that New York is so unique that they require the 5 exams. And for that reason, if you look at the national data set that we've got out there, New York has abysmal graduation rates comparatively. And, you know, that's probably a byproduct of the 5 exams, not because the kids are less smart or anything like that, or that the education isn't as good. It's just those are a lot of hoops to jump through just to graduate. So with that respect, like getting waivers on the assessments, I haven't seen that have the benefit that you have, but certainly, you know, similar struggles with testing in general, you know, the impact that has on a state like here in Colorado, where the state test means nothing, is that the kids just blow it off. So it's a different issue, but equally makes graduation rates and or proficiency rates like not the valid thing to look at.
Mhm.
Does anybody have
if that
anything else? Yeah, no, definitely. I mean,
Yeah, striking that balance is 50 years later, we're still trying to strike that balance.
Right.
Yeah. Does anybody else have anything to share about their either what's happening at their organization, or if they you know, would like to see some kind of measures in place that might, you know, grow on a national scale? Like we have, you know, thank God, a new, you know, Secretary of Education coming soon. So what would we want from that?
I can share. This is Yajita again. I'm based out of California, and I teach at California Innovative Career Academy, part of Highlands Community Charter School, Technical Charter School. And so what I like is with our program is that we are addressing those issues. For whatever reason, each adult could not complete their high school diploma. We offer the high school diploma. We do testing that is geared towards adults for funding purposes. And then we also offer them career technical training in addition to receiving, once they graduate with their high school diploma, we accept their transcripts from high school or GED backgrounds. So some may have, the requirement is that they have to be 22 and older for the program, but if they do not have a high school diploma in this country, we can also offer them classes in addition to accepting their GED courses and using that to apply towards their high school diploma credits as well. What I like, all of that, you know, just works, that we just don't provide only a high school diploma, that we provide funding and are in partnership with major employers, in addition to a college, medical schools, to where students upon graduating, they can actually get certification, training, and certification to where they can be successful in careers that will take them out of that underserved poverty level after they graduate.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say enough about it. I think it's just so important that we give this access and opportunity. It would be nice to be able to have something that was, you know, a national initiative, right? So that we could, you know, move forward and say, hey, this is a great framework that is useful and will, you know, make a difference in the lives of our kids. And so, that's certainly my hope, is that we can, come together and, have something that across states will, mitigate the circumstances that act as roadblocks to all of them. Well, we're at the ends. We have like 2 minutes left. So if anyone has any final thoughts about what we've discussed today, I thank everyone for joining in. Jody, thank you so much for popping in and letting us throw questions at you too. Like I said, we're really excited about the future, even with COVID and, what we can do, and we see opportunity in helping grow our students and, getting them to that finish line. And I'm certainly hopeful that, the conversations will continue and that there will be some advocacy that's going to result in something that will be beneficial.
Okay, thanks, everybody. This
Thank
Zoom
you.
stuff is terrible.
Thank you. Yeah, it's weird.
See you all in San Diego.
Bye,
next
thank you.
year.
Yes, San Diego next year.
Yay.
Bye.